Hey guys, this is Mike. I just wanted to show you how to install and utilize OwnCloud on an UnRAID server. And essentially what this is it's another Dropbox type replacement, except instead of using the Dropbox cloud, you're going to go ahead and use your own server. So your data is secure. You don't have to worry about third parties snooping through it generally. So what I'm at here is the UnRAID 6 dashboard screen. So first thing I'm going to do is go over to this Apps tab, and it updates your content as soon as you go in. And I'm just going to go up here and search for OwnCloud. Find. Oops. Gotta love autocorrect. Okay, let's delete that and search for OwnCloud. And there we are. So we got 3 different instances. Now, in the process of creating this channel, I experimented with the top 2 here. This one I had some trouble getting to work. I'm not sure why. It just would not pull up the web page after. However, this one on Bungie's repository, this one I had very good luck with. So we're going to go ahead and install that one. So I'm going to go ahead and click Add. And then it brings up your typical your Docker configuration screen. So this particular distribution of OwnCloud has 3 different container settings you can set, and that's basically the location of where your files are going to be. Now, one thing I noticed is, at least on my system, let me close that. At least on my system, it defaults into the cache folder, which is actually on my cache drive. And I don't really like that because that's also the one drive on my system that is not mirrored or backed up. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. And I like the whole app data folder idea. I just don't like that cache location there. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. Now this is going to be app data OwnCloud apps. So I'm going to go under user, app data, and I previously created this OwnCloud folder. And then I'm just going to go ahead at the end to type apps. Okay. And I'm going to do the same for the next 2 directories, and that's for the config and the data. So same thing, user, app data, OwnCloud, and I'm going to type config. And lastly, this is for my data, and this is where all your files are going to be kept. App data, OwnCloud, and I'm going to go ahead and type in here data. The other thing you have here is the host port, which is 8000. I'm going to leave that at the default, and everything else we can just leave alone right now. So I'm going to go ahead and click create, and then it goes through and actually does the installation of your OwnCloud for you. So at this point, if I go back to my dashboard, you'll see I have my OwnCloud not only installed, but the Docker's running, as you can see by the green arrow here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that green arrow, and I get the pop-up menu. And I'm going to go ahead and choose Web UI. And this is going to go ahead and start up my OwnCloud configuration page. Now, at first glance, if you're not familiar with this, it looks like it's asking you to log in. But if you look a little closer, you're creating an admin account. So this is where you're actually going to set up the account you're going to use to configure your OwnCloud. So I'm going to go ahead here and type in, for my username, I'll type in Mike Fury Tech. And this is just a demo server. It's going to get wiped out later. But then you go ahead and type in a password here. And it will tell you, very weak password. And there's other things too, which depending on how advanced you want to get, this is based on an SQL Lite database. You can go ahead and actually upgrade to a more commercial database if you're going to be using this for anything more than just 1 or 2 users. So I'm going to go ahead and click Finish Setup. No, I don't want to save my password. and it goes out and it creates your admin account, and it's going to take you right into your OwnCloud page. Once we get into our OwnCloud page, this is basically what you want to see. It takes you to the first page, which is where you can download your various clients to go with your UnCloud server. So you have a desktop app which works with pretty much everything from Windows to the Mac, even to Linux itself, which makes sense. This is a Linux server we're running on. Also, you have a version for Android and a version for iOS. If you're one of the pioneers that are using a Windows phone, you're kind of out of luck in this case. In addition, it does support open standards like WebDAV, so you can connect to your server using any number of technologies. I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to go ahead and open another window to get the desktop app for the Mac. I'll show you how to use that, and then I'm going to close this. Now, when you first set it up, it automatically puts some files into your OwnCloud server for you, including the product manual. It gives you some sample photographs here that you can go ahead and view. And this is essentially what the web interface looks like for OwnCloud. Now, if you're going to continue to connect to it only from your internal network, and that's possibly fine for some people, all you need to know is this address here and port 8000. And that'll take you to your server and your OwnCloud directory. And if you're going to sync other laptops or computers on your local network, there's really nothing else you have to do, and that would include mobile devices. Now, however, if you want to access your OwnCloud server from outside your network, and I'm going to caution you, you're going to be exposing your server to the network. You can do that. I'm going to show you how to do that. As to the wisdom of whether it's a good idea for you to do that or not, that's entirely up to you. If you're really nervous about putting open ports on your network, then maybe you need to look at somebody that hosts an OwnCloud server for you. But if you want to do it entirely on your own, this is what you're going to do. Now, first, let me show you how to set this up on your internal network with an OwnCloud client. So here, I'm going to go ahead and download the Mac version of the OwnCloud client. And it's downloading, as you can see up here. Now downloaded, so I'm going to go up here and start my OwnCloud installer. And this is just for the client. This does not have to be on the same machine you're running your server on. This could be on anything on your network. So once you get the OwnCloud client installed, you basically just type in the server address here. So in my case, I'm going to put in HTTP. I don't have a certificate on here, so HTTPS is not an option. Again, be careful if you're going to put your server on the outside world. You are going to want to have encrypted connections, so you are going to need to set it up with a certificate. So I'm just kind of giving you a proof of concept here, and then the hardening, just remember to do that as a post setup step. So in my case here, I'm going to go ahead and type in 192.168.1.49, just my local IP address on my internal network. And this is just a test network. This all disappears at the conclusion of this video anyway. So colon 8000, that's important. You need to know your port number. So I click next. And then it wants your username and password. Now if you remember, if you haven't set up any additional usernames, this is going to be that one that we used when we first created the account, which is probably the easiest way to go at this point. Next. And once it authenticates, you've got the option. And those of you that use Dropbox will be very familiar with this. Do you want to sync everything that's on the server, or do you want to choose which folders to sync? And then you can just pick and choose what you want at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and click connect. And at that point we're done. It's actually syncing to my local system, and I can either open UnCloud in a browser, which if you look, that's going to be basically the same interface we had prior, right? Or I can open local folder, and then it brings me into my Finder window, and you can see that the files actually have downloaded to my local system. So congratulations, you've got an UnCloud server working. Now, that was the easy part. So let's go ahead and take a look at what happens now if I try to synchronize to the outside world. I'm going to go ahead and remove my OwnCloud client on this Mac, and then I'm going to show you what happens if I try to reinstall it using an externally facing IP address. Okay, so what I've done now is I've basically deleted the client configuration for the OwnCloud client, which is leaving me in a state where we were right after we installed the OwnCloud client, so it doesn't know anything about my server. I'm going to go ahead and configure this to point to an external facing IP address, which I'm going to obfuscate here for obvious reasons. http:// and notice I did leave off the S. I have not set this up for secure connections yet. And I'm going to type in my address with the port 8000. I'm going to go ahead and click next, and you're going to see failed to connect to OwnCloud at obfuscated address, and it says bad request. Now the trick here is if you look, it says bad request. It doesn't say anything about I couldn't find the port. And the reason for that is I've already actually set up on my router the open port, and that's an important step. You do need to set that port to some external port to forward into port 8000. In my case, I just set the external port on my router to 8000 to go ahead and talk into my UnRAID server. Now, the problem though has nothing to do with that. The problem is there's also a configuration file where you need to set up your external address or your external URL if you have one. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. Now here's the one little thing about UnRAID you need to know. If you try to go in and muck with configuration files or sometimes even delete directories, you're going to get a lot of permission errors. It just won't let you do it. And one skill you really need to get if you're going to use UnRAID is the ability to use terminal. And I'm going to show you how to do that now to fix this. So bringing in my terminal window, and let's go ahead and minimize that or get rid of that. And essentially I'm already logged in as root. And root on Unix is basically your godlike account. You can do anything you want on the server. And you're going to have to get comfortable with a few Linux commands. So in this case here, I'm logged into my MNT mount user app data directory, and you can see in here there's that OwnCloud directory that I had created earlier and I've been using to store my OwnCloud server. So I'm going to do cd, which is change directory, into OwnCloud. And by the way, the ls just means list. It's basically a directory command. And the space -l just gives me more details about it. I just like to look better as opposed to just typing ls, which just gives you the 3 file names. But I'm going to go ahead and go into the config directory. And there's the file I'm looking at. Now, if you try to go in through your file system and you mount a drive out to, in my case, Elsa, my server, and drill down to that directory, and I try to edit this config file, which is config.php, it's not going to let me do it. It's going to give me permissions denied. But I can edit it through my terminal here, and I'm going to go really old school on some of y'all, and I'm going to use the old text editor VI. I'm having some trouble with the terminal inside Mac OS X and its ability to remotely use the VI editor. So I've basically just moved over to a Windows machine right now, and I'm just going to show you how to do it from here. So back in that same directory, I'm going to go ahead and type in vi config.php, and again, this is kind of an old school editor. So use the J key to go down, and the line you're interested in is this one right here. Basically it starts the array, And this is the allowable addresses to connect to your OwnCloud server. So I'm going to go to the end of that line. I'm going to hit A for append, and I'm going to go ahead and type in my external server address. So typing in the address here in single quotes. :port 8000. Then I put that trailing comma at the end. I hit escape, and then I hit :WQ, which is write and quit the file. Now keep in mind, if I had an external domain address or fully qualified domain name, I could put that in there in exactly the same manner. Okay, so let's go back to our OwnCloud client now and try to connect remotely. Okay, so back over to my original machine. Here's my OwnCloud client, and I'm going to basically do the same thing, but I'm going to connect using my external IP address. Again, using port 8000, I click next, and look, I didn't get an error this time. I'm in. That's because of that configuration change that I made. So at this point, your OwnCloud server is installed, and you have the ability to connect both from an internal connection point on your network and from an external connection point. So just one other thing I want to show you while I'm in here before I end this video. Going back over to my UnRAID server, and I don't need this right now, so let's go ahead and close that. I'm going to go back into my configuration. And by the way, if you forgot how to get in here, just go over to UnCloud on your Docker setup and click Web UI, and it bounces you right in. And if I go up here under Mike Fury Tech and I go down to users, because I am an administrator, I can go ahead and add additional users into my OwnCloud server. So if I had additional people in my organization, or if it's a home server and you have additional people in your house, perhaps your children or your spouse, you could go ahead and add them in, and they could each have their own Dropbox server running off your UnRAID 6 server. So they don't necessarily have to have any limits like you do with Dropbox, and it certainly isn't going to cost you anything more than running the server itself. However, if you did want to add somebody and you wanted to give them a limit, you have the option here of putting a quota on them. So if you want the full Dropbox experience, you could say, here, you only get 5 gigs. Anyway, so that's basically all there is to it. Again, if you're going to set this up in a professional environment, just a couple things to look at that I did not cover here. One is, by default, this will run on an SQLite server. You can roll a commercial database server underneath it, beyond the scope of this video to do that. And second, if you're going to open up a port to the outside world, you should really have a secure connection. So you're going to want to put a SSL certificate on there. You can get them, I think they're like anywhere from $10 to $30 a year, and you would have to install that on your external access point, or in most people's case, a router, or if you have a firewall in place, you can use one of those. If you don't want to open up an outside port and you just want to run it internally, there's just really not much you have to do. Just the only downside is you won't be able to sync once you leave your home or your small business or wherever you have your server set up. So that's it. We covered a lot of material here. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'll be happy to help you work through any problems you have. And if you liked the video, please click the like button. And if you like what I'm doing here, I'd be honored if you click subscribe. This is Mike. Take care.